afternoon. I'm Assistant Sheriff Dory Corn with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. I'm here today to provide additional details on an officer-involved shooting that occurred this past Tuesday, January 6, 2026. Please note we're still early into the investigative process, and as such, some of the details may change as we collect more information. This is our first officer-involved shooting for this year, and it is our first fatal officer-involved shooting. At this time last year, we did not have any officer-involved shootings. The location of this incident was at an apartment complex near the 9200 block of West Russell Road. You can see an overview of the scene to my left. The officer involved in this incident is Tristan Taylor. He is 28 years old and has been with LVMPD since 2024. Officer Taylor is currently assigned to Summerlin Area Command, which is a part of our Community Safety Division. He was armed with a staccato 9mm handgun, equipped with an optic and a tactical light. The investigation revealed he fired 4 rounds. The suspect in this incident has been identified as Justin Walsh. He's 44 years old, 5'10", 185 pounds. Walsh was armed with a Springfield XD .40 caliber handgun, and the firearm had 6 rounds in the chamber. You can see some photos to my left that show the suspect's weapons. Walsh's charges, if he had survived, would have been 2 counts of assault with a deadly weapon on a protected person, resisting a police officer with the firearm, kidnapping with a deadly weapon, assault with a deadly weapon, domestic violence related, and domestic battery by strangulation. The details of this incident are as follows. On January 6, 2026, at approximately 7:32 in the morning, LVMPD received a 911 text where a woman was stating that she was being threatened by a male with a gun. You can see the text to the left of the screen. The phone used for this 911 text was traced to an apartment complex near the 9200 block of West Russell Road. Officers were immediately dispatched to this location, and a short time later, LVMPD received a 911 call from the same phone in which a woman can be heard in the background crying. The female was begging a male to stop and to let her leave. This call was disconnected, but our call taker took the initiative to call back. And at that time, a male answered the phone, but he refused to let the female speak to the police. We'll now play an audio from that call.
Tuesday, January 6, 2026, 07:48 and 01 seconds.
Hello? Hello, this is Metro Police on our recorded line. Hello?
No.
Hello?
Sorry?
Hi, this is Las Vegas Metro.
Okay.
Did you call in?
No. I'm sorry. It was a mistake.
Who is that in the background?
What is that in the background?
Yeah, why is
Nothing.
the woman crying?
She's not crying.
Can I talk to her?
You can absolutely talk to her.
Can you put her on the phone?
Yeah, I have her on the phone right now.
Okay, can I get off speaker, please?
No, you can say what you need to say.
Ma'am?
Let me hold it. I can talk to myself.
Why are you not giving her the phone?
She has the phone.
She said, let me hold it.
She is holding the phone.
She said she doesn't have it, sir. Can you just hand her the phone, please?
As you heard in the 911 call, just a very dangerous situation, if you can read between the lines there of what's being said and what's not being said. So as expected, our officers immediately went to that location. As they arrived in the apartment complex, they located the apartment door where they believed the call originated from, and then they heard 2 people arguing. While in front of the door suddenly opened, and a female attempted to crawl out to the officers in the hallway. The male half, later identified as Justin Walsh, could be seen trying to pull the female back into the apartment with one hand and then pointing a firearm at the female's head using his other hand. Officers immediately issued verbal commands, but Walsh refused to comply, and then he began to raise his firearm towards our officers. Officer Taylor quickly took action to address the threat and fired 4 rounds, striking Walsh. All of this happened in a matter of split seconds in a close, confined area. And now I will show you body-worn camera footage from Officer Taylor, and then we'll show you a slowed-down version just to highlight the dangers that this victim and our officers faced in that moment.
Hey, put your hands up! Put your fucking hands up!
Now you'll see a still photo of the suspect attempting to pull the victim back inside the apartment while holding a firearm to her head using the other hand. This is what the officer saw in those split seconds as the door opened. And then you'll see another still photo here of the suspect taking a shooting stance and pointing the firearm right at Officer Taylor. As soon as the threat was addressed, our officers took Walsh into custody and began providing medical attention while waiting for medical personnel to arrive. Walsh was transported to a local hospital where he later died. The female was treated by medical personnel on scene, and none of our officers were injured during this incident. This concludes the formal part of this briefing, but I just want to take a moment here and say 2 things. First, this incident is a stark reminder of the dangers that our men and women in law enforcement face every single day. And it's also an important reminder of the courage, the professionalism, and the decisiveness that our officers demonstrate in a moment where really seconds matter the most and where lives are on the line. Our call taker and dispatcher were persistent. They made sure that they called back on a 911 disconnect, and they made sure that they were asking questions to identify a dangerous situation. And then Officer Taylor, his quick actions and decisiveness to address a threat within a matter of split seconds, combined with the bravery of everyone involved that day, really saved a life. The second thing I think that's very important to mention, particularly with this officer-involved shooting, is the issue of domestic violence in our community. The reality is too many members in our community are facing domestic violence, and there's a lot more that can be done. We're at the start of this new year, so there's no better time from my perspective to pause and remind everyone who may be dealing with abuse that there are resources and that they're not alone. And we'll actually want to provide some information that if someone is dealing with domestic violence, please do not hesitate. Reach out to Safe Nest or a victim advocates unit. And we're asking you in the media to take the effort to really put it out there. Let's start this year out with trying to reduce domestic violence, because bottom line, early intervention really does make a difference. And Sheriff McMahill has made it very clear that one of his ongoing priorities is to reduce domestic violence and crime as a whole in any way we possibly can. So I think we can start with messaging out the right information to get people help when they need it. With that said, I can take some questions.
Mr. Sheriff, do we know if there was any similar calls prior to this incident at the department?
At this time, no. There was no indication that there were prior calls for service or prior indication that this couple was having other domestic violence incidents at this time. But as I mentioned earlier, it's early into the investigation process, so some things may change as we recover more information.
Outside of Officer Taylor, do we know how many officers in total arrived at that apartment?
So I can tell you, Officer Taylor was one of the officers. There were 3 additional officers and a sergeant that were there pretty quickly right when the incident unfolded.
4 in total?
4 in total, including the sergeant.
When it comes to incidents like this, is this what Metro Police train for when they're at the jetty, opening a door and quickly having to decide whether or not to fire?
So the question is, when it comes to incidents like this, is this what our police officers train to do, particularly at the jetty, our training center that we recently built? And the short answer is yes. They go through a variety of training exercises to include situations where they have to react very quickly in a matter of split seconds and make a decision. They do go through those kind of training scenarios, and I think you can see in this case an officer that just hired on in 2024, so has been on really only a couple years now, and he performed really well in dealing with a threat that not only he faced, but that the victim faced right in that moment.
Also, when you're talking about use of force, I know you go through various means, but because the officer knew there was likely a gun involved, is that why they had their firearms drawn and decided not to use any other type of force?
Well, so that's the question is because there was a call and the details indicated that there was a gun potentially involved, is that why there was no other options used when faced with the firearm, for example? But that's not exactly the case because in this situation, there was just a matter of split seconds. So there was really no time. And when you're dealing with someone with a firearm, that is a lethal threat. So you first have to make sure you have lethal coverage before you can consider any other de-escalation methods. But it's also important to note that while the training has been really remarkable and a game changer in terms of preparing our officers, it's not just training. We've reduced officer-involved shootings last year significantly, but at the end of the day, it's also we react to what the suspects do. And sometimes there are just very violent people out there that are going to force us to have to use lethal options rather than de-escalate in other ways.
And then also, do you know if the suspect had any previous criminal history?
You know what? I don't have the answer right now. I can get that to you at a later time. As I said, we're just 72 hours into this, so we're still collecting information. With that, take one more question, and then I'll have to wrap up.
For Walsh, do we know if he was a resident of that address or was there a car? Did he arrive at that address? Do we know anything about what his relationship is to that address?
The question is whether he was a resident to that address or whether he was living there. At this time, based on our investigation, we believe they were both staying there, but primarily him at that time. With that, we're going to wrap up because we have another briefing that we have to do. I'll transition now to Assistant Sheriff Brian Peterson to discuss our second officer-involved shooting. Thank you.